Welcome to Jefferson International Airport.
Always be kind to strangers. You never know which one will become your favorite memory.
Airports are strange places. Thousands of people cross paths every day. Most never meet. Some never even notice each other. But every once in a while, one ordinary meeting changes a lifetime. This is George Walker. An elderly man quietly straightens a worn paperback book before opening it. His movements are slow, not because he's weak, because he believes some things deserve to be handled with care. His coat is old but spotless. His shoes have clearly been repaired more than once. Beside him rests a faded canvas travel bag with years of use stitched into every corner. He watches a plane lift into the sky. A child would watch it with excitement. George watches it with gratitude. Almost as if every takeoff reminds him that life always keeps moving. Before anyone notices George notices everyone. A businessman drops a boarding pass. George quietly picks it up and catches him before he reaches security. Businessman. Oh, thank you. George smiles. Just pass it on. A nervous elderly woman struggles to read the departure board. George walks over. Without touching her arm or invading her space, he simply says, Dallas moved from gate 18 to gate 20. Her face lights up. How did you see that? George chuckles. Old eyes learn to look a little longer. She laughs. Thank you. George smiles. Just pass it on. A little boy drops his toy airplane beneath George's chair. George retrieves it with exaggerated seriousness. Captain, he whispers, we've recovered your aircraft. The boy salutes. George salutes back. The boy bursts into laughter. His mother smiles for the first time all morning. George simply returns to his seat. No applause. No audience. Just kindness. This is Claire Reynolds approaches while finishing a business call. An elegant, confident, focused. She reaches gate 24. Every seat is occupied, except one. Beside George. She glances toward him. Notices the old coat, the worn bag, the tired shoes. She hesitates. She doesn't sneer. She doesn't roll her eyes. She simply tells herself, I'll wait. She remains standing. George notices. For half a second, a shadow crosses his face. Not hurt. Recognition. As if this has happened before. He quietly returns to his book. The terminal doors slide open. Ethan Carter enters, talking with his assistant, Olivia. He's discussing numbers, meetings, investments. His pace is confident. Then, something catches his eye. Not all at once. George is just another traveler in the crowd. Ethan keeps walking. But something feels familiar. He glances back. Keeps walking. Looks again. His conversation starts to drift. Olivia notices. Mr. Carter? No answer. He walks another few steps. Then stops. Not dramatically. Almost instinctively. He stares across the terminal. Toward George. Ethan, barely audible. Where do I know him from? A traveler rushes away from the cafe. His wallet slips from his jacket. Nobody notices. Except George. He picks it up. Walks through the busy terminal. Returns it without opening it. The traveler checks inside. Cash. Cards. Passport. Everything is untouched. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. George smiles. Just pass it on. Ethan watches from a distance. Something about those words stirs a memory he can't quite reach. Olivia steps beside Ethan. Sir, we should head to the lounge. Ethan doesn't move. His eyes remain fixed on George. Finally, he says, Olivia. She looks at him. Find out who that man is. She frowns. Do you know him? A long silence. Ethan's eyes never leave George. Then he quietly answers, I hope I do. Some people spend their whole lives chasing success. Others spend their whole lives changing lives, without anyone ever knowing. Ethan hasn't moved. George is still reading, unaware that someone across the terminal can't stop looking at him. Olivia notices Ethan is distracted. Olivia. You've checked your watch 3 times in 1 minute. That's usually your sign that something's bothering you. Ethan forces a smile. Maybe I'm just getting old. Olivia laughs. Not old enough to forget a face. That sentence lingers. Because Ethan isn't trying to remember a name. He's trying to remember a feeling. George slowly walks toward the airport cafe. Before he reaches the counter, the young barista smiles. Lily. Good morning, Mr. Walker. George smiles warmly. Morning, Lily. The usual? Unless you've suddenly become a gourmet chef. She laughs. Still just black coffee. George reaches for his wallet. Lily gently pushes his hand away. You've already paid. George looks confused. I don't remember paying. Lily smiles. Not today. She nods toward an empty table. Last Friday, 1 week earlier, an exhausted young father sits in the cafe counting coins. He's $2 short. Embarrassed, he starts putting the food back. George quietly steps forward. Without making a scene, he pays the difference. The father tries to thank him. George simply smiles. Just pass it on. Back to the present. Lily places George's coffee in front of him. He came back yesterday. George looks up. Did he? He paid for 3 strangers. George lowers his eyes. A quiet smile appears. Not pride. Hope. From across the cafe, Ethan notices something unusual. Nobody treats George with pity. They treat him with affection. The airport employees greet him by name. Passengers smile at him. Children wave. George belongs here. But why? A university student frantically searches through her backpack. Her phone battery is dead. She begins to panic. My boarding pass was on my phone. George quietly reaches into his faded canvas bag. He removes a neatly wrapped charging cable. Would this help? She looks relieved. You just saved me. George smiles. Then promise me something. Anything. Just pass it on. She nods. She means it. Outside the cafe, a baggage handler spots George through the terminal window. He raises a hand enthusiastically. Mr. Walker! George waves back. The man comes inside for a quick handshake. My daughter got into nursing school. George's face lights up. That's wonderful. She says you're the reason she never gave up. George looks genuinely surprised. I only encouraged her. The man smiles. Sometimes encouragement changes everything. As he walks away, Ethan catches every word. Claire has now witnessed. The barista greeting George. The student thanking him. The baggage handler hugging him. She quietly walks to Lily. Claire. Can I ask you something? Of course. Who is that gentleman? Lily smiles. She glances toward George. That's George. Claire waits. Lily says nothing else. Claire laughs softly. George, who? Lily shrugs playfully. To some people, a pause. Just George. Claire isn't satisfied. And to everyone else? Lily smiles. You'll find out. George finishes his coffee. He bends to place the cup in the recycling bin. As he lifts his bag, a small, faded photograph slips out unnoticed. It glides beneath a nearby chair. George walks away, still unaware. A few moments later, Ethan walks past. Something catches his eye. He bends down, picks up the photograph. It's old, creased. The colors are fading. A younger George is standing beside a little boy. The boy's face is partly hidden by a fold in the picture. But Ethan freezes. His breathing changes. His fingers tighten around the photograph. Another memory flashes. Rain. A bus terminal. A warm hand resting on a child's shoulder. A familiar voice saying, "Eat first. We'll figure everything else after." The flashback disappears. Ethan whispers, "It can't be." George returns, searching his bag. He realizes something is missing. Before he can look around, Ethan steps forward, holding the photograph. For the first time, the two men stand face to face. The terminal noise fades into the background. Ethan holds out the photograph. "Ethan." "Sir." George smiles. "Thank you." Their hands briefly touch. Ethan studies George's face. Every wrinkle. Every line. Searching. Hoping. George notices Ethan's curiosity. He smiles kindly. "Have we met before?" Ethan hesitates. His answer catches in his throat. "I don't know." George nods gently. "Life has a funny way of bringing people together." He slips the photograph back into his bag, picks up his book, and quietly returns to his seat, leaving Ethan standing there, with more questions than answers. Some memories hide for years, waiting for the right face, at the right moment, to bring them home. George returns to his seat, adjusts his glasses, and reopens his book. Ethan remains standing, watching him. Olivia walks over. "Olivia." "Sir, we really need to leave." Ethan doesn't move. His eyes remain fixed on George. "Ethan, have you ever forgotten someone's face, but never forgotten how they made you feel?" Olivia looks at him. For the first time, she realizes this isn't about business. It's personal. A cleaner waves at George. A wheelchair attendant smiles. Two gate agents greet him by name. Even the newspaper vendor raises a hand. George greets every single one. He remembers birthdays, children's names, health problems, little details. Not because he has an extraordinary memory, because he genuinely listens when people speak. The narrator quietly says, "Some people become important because of what they own. Others, because of how they make people feel." George unwraps a simple lunch. A homemade cheese sandwich. An apple. A small bottle of water. Nothing expensive. Nothing special. Just enough. Before he takes his first bite, he notices an airport cleaner sitting alone. The young man quietly counts the coins in his pocket. Not enough for lunch. George smiles. Walks over. Without saying a word, he places half of his sandwich beside him. The cleaner looks up. Embarrassed. "Cleaner." "Sir, I can't." George smiles. "Then help someone else when you can." The cleaner nods, trying not to cry. Flashback. As Ethan watches, the image slowly dissolves into the past. Winter, 1989. Cold rain falls. 10-year-old Ethan sits on a wooden bench at a nearly empty bus terminal. His jacket is soaked. His stomach growls. He hugs his knees tightly. People pass him. Nobody stops. Then, a pair of worn shoes enters the frame. The camera slowly tilts upward. Young George, 30 years younger. Still wearing simple clothes. Still carrying the same faded canvas bag. He kneels. Not above the boy. Beside him. Young George. That's a heavy backpack for such a little fellow. The boy doesn't answer. George notices the tears. Have you eaten today? The boy shakes his head. Present. Ethan blinks. The memory disappears. His breathing becomes heavier. He whispers, I remember the voice. He still isn't completely sure, but his heart already knows. Claire walks to the coffee shop. She notices another elderly traveler standing with a walking stick. The only empty seat is beside him. She pauses. The old version of Claire would have kept walking. Instead, she smiles. Claire, mind if I sit here? The gentleman smiles warmly. I'd enjoy the company. George notices from across the terminal. A small smile crosses his face. He says nothing, because real change never needs applause. George reaches into his bag. He removes a weathered leather notebook. He writes today's date. Then one short sentence. The camera moves close enough for viewers to read. Today I met another grateful heart. He closes the notebook before anyone else can see. Ethan notices. But not the words. Only the care with which George protects it. Olivia's phone rings. Olivia. The board is waiting. Ethan slowly takes out his boarding pass. Looks at it. Looks at George. Without a word, he tears the boarding pass in half. Olivia gasps. Olivia. Sir! Ethan smiles. Not the smile of a businessman. The smile of a little boy who has finally found hope. Some flights are worth missing. Some people aren't. George stands and slowly walks toward the large airport windows. A plane lifts gracefully into the evening sky. Ethan walks toward him. Not hurriedly. Not dramatically. Just one careful step after another. He stops beside George. They both watch the aircraft disappear into the clouds. Without looking at him, George quietly says, Beautiful, isn't it? Ethan smiles. Yes. I've been looking for you for 30 years. George slowly turns. Confused. The music stops. Some journeys begin with a ticket. Others begin with a thank you that waited 30 years. George slowly turns. His kind eyes meet Ethan's. For a few seconds, neither man speaks. George smiles politely. George, I'm afraid you have the advantage. Ethan lets out a nervous laugh. You don't remember me. George studies his face. Really studies it. Then gently shakes his head. I'm sorry. There is no embarrassment in George's voice. Only honesty. George gestures to the empty seat beside him. Well, he smiles. After 30 years. A tiny chuckle. You should probably sit down. Ethan laughs. For the first time in years. He isn't thinking about quarterly reports. Or board meetings. He's simply a man sitting beside someone who unknowingly changed his life. An announcement echoes through the terminal. Attention passengers. Flight 218 has been delayed due to weather conditions. Groans ripple through the gate. George smiles. Looks like life has given us a little more time. Ethan looks up and quietly says, Maybe that's exactly what we needed. The audience smiles. Not because of coincidence. Because it feels like life. Ethan reaches into his wallet. Carefully removes an old plastic sleeve. Inside, a faded Greyhound bus ticket. George adjusts his glasses. His eyebrows lift. Ethan places it in George's hand. Ethan, I've carried this for 30 years. George studies the ticket. His fingers gently trace the worn edges. A memory flickers behind his eyes. Not complete. Just enough to make him pause. Claire notices the emotion. Instead of pretending not to watch, she quietly sits several seats away. Not to eavesdrop, but because she feels something important is happening. Lily notices. Officer Maria notices. Even the veteran quietly lowers his newspaper. Nobody interrupts. The airport keeps moving. Yet this little corner seems untouched by time. Ethan finally speaks. It was January. Cold enough that I couldn't feel my hands. Flashback. Rain falls against the roof of a lonely bus station. Young Ethan sits alone. Hungry. Scared. A stranger kneels beside him. The camera still hides George's face. Only his hands. His voice. His kindness. Young George. You're shivering. He removes his own scarf. Wraps it around the little boy. There. That's better. Back to the present. George closes his eyes. Another fragment returns. George whispers. The scarf. Ethan looks up immediately. George continues. Blue wool. Your hands were freezing. Ethan's eyes fill with tears. You remember. George smiles sadly. Not all of it. Just little pieces. Then he chuckles softly. Getting old isn't for cowards. The surrounding passengers laugh gently. The emotion breathes for a moment. Olivia quietly silences Ethan's ringing phone. She looks at the incoming call. The board of directors. She presses decline. Without asking, she slips the phone back into her pocket. For the first time, she realizes this meeting matters more than any business meeting. George looks at Ethan. George, tell me, did you make it home? Ethan smiles through tears. Yes, because of you. George lowers his head, still not remembering everything. But somehow, his heart already knows. Ethan takes one deep breath. The hardest words of his life. Mr. Walker. He pauses. His voice almost disappears. I never got the chance to tell my mother goodbye. George looks confused. Ethan continues. Until you bought me that ticket. George freezes. The music stops. His eyes widen. Not because he remembers everything, because one forgotten act of kindness has suddenly come home. Most people never know what became of the lives they touched. Sometimes, life gives them one final chance. George still holds the faded bus ticket. His fingers tremble slightly. He looks at Ethan, then back at the ticket. His voice is barely a whisper. George, your mother. Ethan nods slowly. She was dying. George closes his eyes. Another memory surfaces. Rain. The smell of wet concrete. A frightened little boy. A bus pulling into the station. He opens his eyes again. Ethan. For the first time. He remembers the boy's name. Ethan smiles through tears. You remembered. George answers softly. No. My heart remembered before my mind did. The boarding announcements continue. Suitcases roll past. Planes take off. Life goes on. But around George and Ethan, time seems to stand still. Passengers who were rushing moments ago now slow their pace. Some sit. Others quietly stand nearby. Nobody interrupts. Everyone senses they're witnessing something deeply personal. Ethan takes a long breath. 30 years of gratitude has been waiting for this moment. Ethan. That morning. Flashback. Young George unwraps the only sandwich in his bag. He tears it in half. He gives the larger piece to the little boy. Young Ethan hesitates. Young Ethan. What about you? George smiles. I've gone hungry before. He gently places the sandwich into the boy's hands. Children shouldn't have to. Back to the present. Claire quietly wipes away a tear. Another flashback. The ticket clerk slides the bus ticket across the counter. George empties every dollar from his old wallet. Only a few coins remain. The clerk looks at him. Clerk. And yours? George smiles. I'll wait for the next bus. That'll be tomorrow. George nods. Then tomorrow it is. He never hesitates. Not for 1 second. Back at the bus. Young Ethan stands on the first step. George kneels beside him. He straightens the boy's jacket, then places both hands gently on his shoulders. George, listen carefully. The boy looks into his eyes. Life is going to be hard sometimes. A pause. Don't let it make your heart hard too. Another pause. When someone needs help, he smiles. Just pass it on. The bus doors close. Young Ethan watches through the rain-covered window. George grows smaller. Standing alone. Still smiling. Ethan can no longer hold back the tears. Ethan. I made it home. His voice breaks. I held my mother's hand. Another pause. She died the next morning. George lowers his head. His own eyes fill with tears. Not because he wants credit. Because he realizes one ordinary decision gave a little boy one final goodbye. Everyone expects George to say something profound. Instead, he quietly laughs. Not loudly. Just enough to wipe away the heaviness. George, you know something funny? Ethan smiles through tears. What? George shrugs. I almost walked past you that day. The audience is stunned. George continues. I was tired. My feet hurt. I told myself. He smiles sadly. Someone else will help him. Silence. Then I remembered. Flashback. A teenage George, years earlier. Alone. Hungry. Scared. An unknown elderly woman hands him a bowl of soup. She smiles. Promise me something. Young George nods. When life is kinder to you, don't keep it. Flashback ends. George looks at Ethan. That's why I turned around. Nobody applauds. Nobody speaks. Rachel quietly holds Emma closer. Officer Maria removes her cap. The airport cleaner wipes away tears. Lily smiles softly behind the coffee counter. Claire looks at George with completely different eyes. The businessman. The traveler. The child. Everyone has changed. Not because George preached. Because George lived what he believed. George reaches out. Place one withered hand on Ethan's shoulder. He smiles. Kindness is the only thing we can spend. A pause. And still die rich. Silence. No music. No narration. Just those words. Let them breathe. Ethan slowly reaches into his briefcase. Not for money. Not for a contract. He removes a small notebook. He writes one sentence. Then tears out the page. Hands it to George. George reads it. Every year on this day, I will help someone get home. George looks up. His eyes glisten. He folds the note carefully. Places it inside his old notebook. Beside 30 years of memories. George. Now! He smiles. That's how kindness survives. Some debts can never be repaid. They can only be passed forward. The speakers crackle to life. Final boarding call for Flight 218. Passengers begin gathering their bags. The spell is broken. Life starts moving again. George slowly closes his notebook. He slips Ethan's handwritten promise inside, then looks at Ethan with a warm smile. George, looks like they're finally ready for an old man. Ethan laughs. I don't think any of us are ready to let you go. As George starts walking toward the gate, Claire notices another elderly woman struggling with 2 carry-on bags. Without hesitation, she walks over. Claire, may I help you? The woman smiles with relief. Thank you, dear. Claire carries the bags beside her. She glances toward George. He doesn't see her. She smiles anyway. Because kindness doesn't need an audience. Quick cinematic montage. The businessman from earlier picks up a dropped passport before anyone else notices. The university student lends her portable charger to another traveler. The airport cleaner helps a confused tourist find the correct gate. Lily quietly slides a free coffee across the counter to an exhausted mother. Each small act echoes the same unseen lesson. No speeches. Just people choosing kindness. Just before George reaches the boarding gate, Ethan calls out, Mr. Walker! George turns. Ethan, after all these years, why did you keep helping strangers? George smiles. He looks through the airport windows, watching another aircraft rise into the sky. Then he answers, because every person you meet is someone else's whole world. Silence. Nobody moves. That sentence settles over the terminal. George opens his notebook one final time. He writes beneath today's entry, Today, kindness found its way back to me. He closes the notebook, hands it to Ethan. Ethan looks confused. I can't take this. George smiles. You're not taking it. Another smile. You're continuing it. Inside the notebook are decades of small stories. Not to celebrate George, but to remind whoever holds it that every ordinary act matters. George walks toward the boarding gate. Halfway there, little Emma runs after him. She hugs him tightly. George kneels. Emma whispers, I'll remember. George smiles. Good. She asks, Remember what? George gently taps her little heart. Just pass it on. Emma smiles. I promise. George boards the aircraft. He finds his window seat. Outside, the golden evening sun reflects across the runway. Through the terminal glass, Ethan watches the plane slowly push back. He places the notebook against his chest, then quietly turns to Olivia. Let's go! She smiles. To the meeting? Ethan shakes his head. A gentle smile spreads across his face. No! Let's go help someone. The plane lifts into the sky. The camera slowly rises above the airport. Most people spend their lives wondering if they made a difference. The extraordinary ones never stop long enough to ask.